So welcome Anupriya to this debriefing session, and congratulations on scoring a 760 with the V46 and a Q48. Amazing score. So let's talk about your GMAT preparation and in terms of how did you start preparing, and if you can just set some context with regards to what you do, that will help as well.
Thank you so much, Rajat. GMAT, I started preparing seriously this year towards the end. I'm sorry, 2017 towards the end. Although my brother who had also written his own GMAT a couple of years ago, he really wanted me to also write the test because he thought that I could, with some preparation, do it, get a reasonably good score. But I never really paid attention to him. I thought it's difficult. It looks like the kind of thing that people with an engineering background or people with really who are really good at maths, they should try their luck at this. So in 2017, my boyfriend, my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, he also said that maybe you should give it a try because he thought that I had a fairly good command over grammar to begin with, and maybe with a little work, with a little practice, I could also improve my maths. So then another friend of mine suggested, we were discussing where I should go and how I should go about it. So he said that maybe you should consider e-GMAT. Okay. And initially I was also thinking whether I should attend live classes, because there are a lot of coaching institutes where I used to live, and they were not very far, so they would have been pretty accessible. But in the end, because of that friend's insistence, he said, let's just go for e-GMAT. And I just took that decision. I just bought the course. And I think that I know you haven't even asked me that question yet, but I think that was a good decision. Because for the simple reason that I live with a joint family, with very nice people, but who really don't understand the immensity of a particular situation. If it's an exam, it's a difficult exam. It's a format which I'm, as somebody who's always used a pen and a paper to write my exams, I'm not familiar with entirely. So, and I needed some peace and quiet, although I have a room of my own. I used to have a room of my own. People would keep coming in and leaving. So e-GMAT was a good decision because I think the structure and all was very, very user-friendly. And maybe I'll elaborate on that later, perhaps in the next question. But I think it worked for me because it worked for, it just broke concepts down into very small, easily digestible chunks. And it wasn't very difficult for me to get started with the whole preparation. And yeah, so and plus, just that everybody knows, I'd also taken the decision to get married at the same time. So all of that happened at the same time. So had there not been a method to the madness, which e-GMAT brought to the whole process, I don't think I would have been able to do it.
I think just for people who are watch this, you prepared for 3 months based on the information that I have. Then you took a break, got married, and you got married on, was it 1st of January or
24th December? I got married.
24th December.
Yes, 24th December. And of course, right before the marriage for that month, there was no possibility of a preparation. You know how crazy marriages
I know.
can get. And so even after marriage, it was very difficult for me to study. But on 1st January, when we finally moved to our own apartment in Gurgaon, that was when, once again, my husband, not willing to give up, he said, you should just start studying again. So for a moment, I was almost like, okay, I'm why should I study? Let me have some peace of mind. But he didn't let me. So
and when did you take the test?
So I took the test on 11th of January, because that was the only available date, because everything else was taken. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So and a V40. So let's talk about verbal and quant separately. So before you started preparing, did you take? Did you assess what your level was? Did you take a mock test or something?
Actually, no, I didn't. I was, as I said, I've not been a very methodical student most of my life. I almost started doing this with this fear nagging at the back of my mind that I will not be able to do this. It's just, let's just try. And So I did not take a mock test. I don't know whether I should even tell this to, if anybody's listening to this. It's not a very good advice, really. And ideally, you should do that, but I didn't. I just plunged right into whatever I saw in front of me on e-GMAT. And
so how did you go about doing that? Then let's talk about it. So let's start with the verbal part. So which course did you do first? How did you go about doing it?
So I did what I always do. Because my enthusiasm or energy level is pretty high. So I just plunged right into it. I started with verbal. Because I thought that was my strong suit. I was proved wrong very soon because for the simple reason that once I started going through the concept files, and because there are lots of concepts of grammar, which the concept files where those would be explained, and I just realized that I hadn't even had I didn't know much about it. A lot of what I know about English or how to speak or how to write comes from mere practice and intuition. There has to be, you need to know those rules of grammar to be able to attack a question or approach a question in a methodical way. So I think that is how, once I started going through the concept files, I just realized, oh my God, I didn't know so many things. But I progressed pretty fast. Once I would go through it, I'd understand the concept, and then the questions would follow, because that's how your course is structured. So the questions would follow. I mostly did well initially, so that gave me a lot of confidence. So I just powered through a lot of those concept files initially. So that was a good thing. Although it was exhausting because I was studying after so long, but I quite enjoyed the process initially. Of course, there were some problems later on because, as I said, I used to be very busy. So sometimes, when you are even you're studying and then suddenly you are called away, and then you have to come back, and then the flow sort of breaks. Also, things also got more complicated. So I'll just quickly talk about, like, for example, sentence correction. Things become progressively more difficult. Questions are not just going to be very easy. They're going to be more complicated, and there will be more parts of the question. There'll be more
places where errors can fit in. Yes,
absolutely, and very, very narrow differences between two very similar sounding options. And so I think that's where again e-GMAT came in useful, because it just won't let you relax. The questions, the question bank, for example, all of it makes sure that if you're serious about it, you will be given ample practice. It's as simple as this. And which is why I think I kept going. But reading comprehension, I know I'm like jumping to another section altogether, but reading comprehension was difficult for me. It's a little embarrassing to admit this, but sometimes some of the questions would be so difficult. And yet I think because of the basic instructions or basic guidelines that the concept files would tell you, just stick to those core concepts and just apply them to each passage. And no matter how complicated it is, if you just apply those concepts and do it patiently and calmly, you will be able to you will be at least able to eliminate some of the options, and then
correct ones.
Yes. So I think those were very useful.
So it's very interesting. In the span of 7 days, you're the second person who has said exactly the same thing about reading comprehension. So which was, I mean, I've interviewed about, I think right now, I think it's probably my 150th interviewed.
Wow.
Around, but it's been over a span of 4 or 5 years or so. But it's just, it's never happened that two people have said the same thing about reading comprehension in a span of 7 days. So it's interesting for me. So go on.
Yes. So verbal, I kept practicing also, these suggestions that you would also find on your e-GMAT webinars, etc. That, how you have to keep returning to the same, if you made a question, if you made a mistake in a question, don't just forget about it, revisit it, and that's one of those things that really helps you. My instinct was to just, okay, this question, I made a mistake. Let me just, move on to another question. Maybe I'll get that right. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think that it's very important that you should flag the question and come back to it later, revisit it. Although I didn't get time to revise things too often, as often as I would have liked, but even a single revision, even 2 revisions would really cement the concept and make sure that, when you're writing the test, I guess things would come back to you. So it's very important to make sure that even the slightest, silliest mistakes that you've made, you must flag that particular question and come back to it, because it.
What this is what I call as an instinct of trying to be an expert, which is an amazing instinct. Something like this happened with me last night. Krishna, who's our instructor. Have you attended any session from
Sorry?
Krishna? Krishna, who's our CR instructor.
Oh, not
So
really.
he's we were revamping the CR course. We're actually almost towards the end of revamping the CR course, and so he created a weekend question yesterday, and I was in the middle of something. He said, "Hey, Rajat, I just want you to look at this question and see if the logic and everything is okay or not." I looked at it and didn't get it in the first go, but then when I looked at the answer choice, I understood how he was trying to weaken the author's conclusion. And so but then after that the fact that I didn't get it in the first go stayed in my mind, and even today morning it's like, okay, this is one piece that I missed while reading the argument, and it's still nagging me, even though it doesn't impact me in my work. But the very fact that you have that instinct when you make a mistake somewhere, that it keeps nagging you, you go back and revise that, I think is something that helps you improve every day.
Right. I so agree with that, because sometimes it can get repetitive. It can get boring because, we want to move on to new things, even as far as questions are concerned. I mean, TK, ho gaya, we've done one question. You don't want to come back to it again. You want to explore more. You want to tell yourself that, you're better at it. You will crack the next one. But no matter how, but whether or not you like the process, maybe you should discipline yourself and maybe come back and revisit those questions, because that makes a whole lot of difference. I think it made a difference, because to be honest, even till the end, I took a mock test quite late, much later than I should have ideally. And I realized that even till the end, in my mock tests, or even in those self-assessment Scholaranium tests, I wasn't getting reading comprehension right.
I saw that your ability was around 77, 78.
Oh yes. Yeah. But I think it was also, but on that day, I think my mind was focused, and I think everything sort of also fell in place. But I think that decision to revisit the, mistakes and was perhaps the game changer. And yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a bit about the quant side. So quant was not natural for you.
Quant was so difficult. And to be honest, I entered maths, or I thought when I started practicing quant on e-GMAT, I thought, it won't be very difficult for me, because I studied maths till class 12th, and I wasn't that bad at maths. So,
You can't be given where you started, but
but so that was a complete, that confidence was completely misplaced, because it had been so many years that I had actually practiced math. So even when I started studying quant at on GMAT, e-GMAT, the concept files looked pretty easy to me. Like I thought, oh, I know this, great, this shouldn't be a problem. And then after finishing the concept file, when I would I would start solving the questions, and the first ones obviously would be the easier ones. But suddenly they would throw a curveball, and I would be left completely surprised, and there was no way. And oh my god, I took so long to answer. Sometimes I would take 7 minutes, 8 minutes to answer a question. I'd leave it in frustration and just think that this is not, I can't do this. Thankfully, I was goaded by, again, my brother, my husband, everybody is like, this is a good place to study. This is a good, you've got a good course, good coaching material. They also took a look at it, and they said, this is fine, just keep practicing and don't lose heart. Don't let that 40% or 30%, I got 20% on some tests. Really, it was very embarrassing and heartbreaking, and very, you're like, you just start wondering what happened to your abilities, your your mathematical ability. But once again, the same thing that I did with verbal, I also did with quant. I wish I had done that a little more, because, and this is not just, I actually feel that I could have scored slightly better in quant had I just been slightly more disciplined and hardworking about my practice. I think that's where I missed a few questions which I could have definitely I could have definitely gotten them right, because again, e-GMAT, the concept files and the discussions with each question, which accompanied each question. I mean, that was a brilliant thing that you guys have done, because every question was broken down and explained in a very good way. So had I just visited those more often, I could have scored better in
I
maths.
also remember, I mean, the quant syllabus in general is way more vast than the verbal syllabus. And especially for someone who hasn't been in touch. And in your case, because of your wedding piece, so which meant kind of that even after studying quant, you were out of touch. So what you did was quite commendable. And I would say, given the fact that you have a 760, your GMAT score is going to put you up right there at any B school.
Thank you. Thank you.
So one last question about your GMAT preparation. I think two questions. So first of all, on the exam, what was the section order that you chose?
I started with verbal.
Started with verbal, then
I went for quant.
Verbal, quant, and then IRAWA or AWIR?
I don't think we can choose the order of the last two things.
Oh,
I think
you
it was
cannot?
first,
Okay.
I think it is first IR, and then finally after you're completely exhausted, you're given analytical writing.
Okay, which is good. I think for you would have enjoyed AWA.
Yeah. So verbal was the first thing that I did. And I just want to mention this, that I think right about at the halfway mark, my computer got stuck. And for you take some time to realize what has happened. And I thought initially, did I do something wrong? And then I raised my hand and I asked the invigilator to help me. And he said, oh, this happens often. So the thing that happened was, it happens sometimes. I don't know whether I was supposed to tell that.
It scares me, but go on.
Oh, but how it affected me was that, the adrenaline and the focus that I had right up till then, I actually lost it a bit. I mean, I tried very hard to regain it, but I think that
You start worrying about something else when then this happens.
Yes. And I told myself, it's okay, relax. The timer is exactly where you left it. I'm not going to lose time. But I think then I just, that was a very nice thing to
Very
happen.
important point that you mentioned, that, hey, no matter what happens, don't lose your focus.
You have to, and again, this advice came from my husband as well, that he's also given his MBA entrance examinations. And he said that, no matter how bad you're doing on any test, each question is a new question. Don't give up.
Yes.
And even if you have to tell yourself, you should do that and not give up at any stage.
Yep,
I think
that's something which it's true in so many walks of life, but I mean that's really good advice.
Yeah.
So last question about the GMAT preparation. You in many contexts you mentioned Scholaranium and practicing from there. So just as if you just focus just on Scholaranium, so how did you use it, and what value did you get out of it?
I didn't start using Scholaranium for some time, for the simple reason that I wasn't even sure whether I was ready for it or not. So again, that friend who had initially suggested e-GMAT, he kept asking me, so have you started using Scholaranium? Are you answering questions? And I just kept saying, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. And finally, when I started, it's so well laid out. You can actually, depending on how comfortable you are with a particular concept, or even broadly, you can choose easy questions, you can choose medium difficulty questions. To be very honest, I did not much I didn't much care about the very hard questions
In
in the
quant, yes.
Yes, I could have perhaps, had I been a little more methodical, but I think I was scoring pretty badly. If you look at my scores, they were generally horrible till the end. But even then, the practice that it gave me, I think it made all the difference. And it's such a vast resource pool. It's almost like you can't exhaust that list of questions. And in fact, one thing that I noticed, and was that sometimes, after you answer a question, particularly for like quant questions, when you hover over the timer, you want to compare yourself with other students who've also taken that question. So often I saw that, it just said that this question hasn't been attempted often enough. So I was just wondering why aren't, I just hope other people are using Scholaranium, because it's such
No,
a
so I can tell you why, because the timeline when you were attempting quant questions is when we were upgrading Scholaranium tremendously. And you would have seen this on quant, not on verbal,
right, yeah.
right?
But
And yeah,
yeah, it's
so on
amazing.
quant, we revamped every question in Scholaranium during the 3 months that you were
Right,
you were actually doing. So when we touched each one of the 12, so right, so when you bought the course, you had access to about 750 questions in Quant Scholaranium. By the time you ended, you had 1250, but each one of those 750 was also tinkered with, and the solutions were enhanced. And so because it was tinkered with, we reset the stats for that.
right.
So
But
that's why you basically got certain questions which probably were uploaded a couple of days ago.
right, because I thought it was an amazing resource. It was something that gave me exactly the kind of practice that I required.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. So post GMAT, you want to apply. You've already applied to ISB. You're going to apply to INSEAD, NUS Singapore, if I remember reading your email correctly.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm mostly looking at 1-year courses, because I don't think I want to go for 2-year courses as such. Maybe slightly earlier in my, I mean, right now I just want to finish this slightly quickly, and so just 1-year courses, and which is one is of course ISB, and I've already written the application. I also want to suggest to other people that they should also start, working on the applications much earlier than I did. I have really delayed that process, and INSEAD, the deadline is in a couple of days. I don't know whether I'll be able to even finish it, but I'm going to give it a shot. Just like I gave GMAT a shot, I'm going to give this also my best. And
Okay.
although I think the application process, although it's daunting and it's difficult, it also allows you to take a good hard look at what you've done so far in your life, and assess yourself.
It's very important. Yes.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, the B school application process for I would say more international B schools. I wouldn't say IIMs, but more international B schools is it's a very nice process. Yes, I mean, if you've not written a whole lot, you may find it super difficult. But otherwise, I mean, if you think about, okay, it's one of those mini challenges that you need to overcome, then and you start to enjoy that process, and that it actually is very enjoyable. It makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah, each completed question, and even the whole process, it actually gives you a high that you finally it's a very useful thing to do, even for your future, because you get to take a look at what you've done in your professional life, in your personal life, what you've done well, where you can improve, all of that. I think I understand why these application processes are so long and are detailed now.
yeah,
So
and I think there's a lot of value to it. So I'm
absolutely.
gonna just stop recording. So